Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habata fillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A question was asked about the issue of Hajr in the prison system. So the questioner asked, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I've been getting some questions from some of the brothers concerning the issue of boycotting, shunning of a Muslim within the prisons in the United States of America. Oftentimes, there are Muslims who cause fitnah, whether a lot or a little, and the leadership within the Sunni Salafi community within the prison elects to shun a brother, meaning that the brother can't attend study classes, Jumu'ah Prayer, or even congregational prayers on the tier or housing unit with the other Muslim brothers. This is something that occurs quite often within the prison system, at least in Maryland. I know this because of my experience. Can you offer some advice and evidence that I can provide for the brothers concerning why we can't or shouldn't do this, especially when the Muslims will have nowhere else to establish their Islamic obligations? Ahabatifillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all, protect us all, preserve us all, forgive us all, guide us all, and bless us with ilm nafiya, wa rizqan tayyib wa amalan mutaqabbilan. So first and foremost, as the questioner mentioned, that this is a fitnah. It is a source of discord and disunity and disharmony with the Muslims in the prison system. And one of the things we have to realize is that when being incarcerated, you are in an extremely restricted environment, to say the least. And your options and your worship can be much more difficult to be able to fulfill your obligations to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while you're incarcerated. You have lost your freedom. And depending on the type of prison, the level of the prison, the numbers of Muslims in the prison system, in that locality or in that prison system, what kind of facility? Is it a federal or state facility? There's a lot of factors that go into that. However, when considering such masail, these very high-level issues, for example, boycotting and so forth, which are part of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ boycotted those companions who did not participate in jihad. The Prophet ﷺ also the Hajr for his wives until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed for him to no longer make Hajr. So Hajr is something mashru' in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of Hajr, of boycotting individuals and people, your fellow Muslims. For one, there are basically two different types of boycotting. There's boycotting regarding the religion, and then there's boycotting regarding the worldly affairs, dunyawi. And in this regard, the dunyawi hajr, if you are making hajr of someone for something that doesn't have to do with the deen, then this is something which is actually sinful. And this type of hajr also cannot be more than 3 days. Should not be more than 3 days if you fell out in a business transaction, whatever the case may be. The other type of hajr, of boycotting, is the boycotting which is mashru'. The boycotting which is mashru', meaning it's legislated. And it has various maqasid, if you will. It has various reasons for being legislated. And one of the reasons is in order to protect the community, the Muslim community, from the harm of the person who's committing either sinfulness, who's a wicked sinner, or they are a mubtadi'ah, they are deviant in the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the reasons for not giving someone salams and not having them participate in certain Islamic activities, or not giving them salams and things like this, and not sitting with them, that this is when their harm is feared, meaning you fear that these people will cause a harm to the rest of the community or to yourself. So you stay away from them. The other type of Hajr, which is a little more general, and that we're talking about mashru', that which is legislated Islamically, that this is when a person also is making Hajr for the deeniyah, but it's because it is a sort of ta'deeb, it's a sort of punishment for that individual, meaning that this person is inshallah ta'ala going to learn from this Hajr. So one of the things Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah mentions, which really codifies a lot of masail in the deen, but especially this issue and the way of the Salaf as-Salih, ridwanullahi alayhim, is that mabni ala masalih wa mafasid, is that this issue is built upon looking at the harms and the benefits. Now, if we're honest with ourselves, I rarely can find and think of a situation where people who are incarcerated, who already have their rights and their deen restricted, their whole life is restricted, where there's going to be much maslahah, benefit in making Hajr from them. And mostly, this is my tasawwur, this is my outlook on this, and from my experience in dealing with inmates and in the system, is that I cannot personally think of hardly an issue or hardly a situation where this is going to be a greater benefit. So meaning, when you are incarcerated, okay, so as I said, this is a mabni ala masalih wa mafasi. You're looking at the harms and the benefits. And you're looking at the harms and the benefits for the individuals involved and for the community. When you're in prison, especially on the federal level and in the bigger prisons, the Muslims, they may need to stick together as a source of protection. Okay, and one example, I was just talking to a beloved brother to me who was incarcerated when he was 16. They tried him as an adult. And a situation where just a woman was talking to him and he was cleaning, and then this individual wanted to cause him harm, became very angry, and this individual was big, monster swole, wanted to harm him. And the other Muslims found out. The Imam contacted this individual, and the Muslims lined up like troops. And this individual had enough courage to answer the Imam. It would have been better for him just to stay away. Hey, there's a bunch of Muslims over there calling me. I think I better stay away. He didn't. He came. He was beat down. Okay, I'm not advocating violence, but this is the life. This is the reality. From low-level facilities to high-level facilities, violence, drugs, everything you could imagine is present, and the propensity for violence. So Muslims are in need of sticking together. That's number one. Secondly, with all the sins and all the issues that go on in the prisons, a lot of times there may be a lot of reverts, or there may be people who are born Muslim. Ala kulli hal, most of the people are in not the strongest state of iman. Okay, there's also those individuals from the men and the women that are incarcerated that are very strong in iman, strong in their faith. But many of the people are not that knowledgeable most of the time and not strong in their faith. When you make Hajr, mostly there will not be much maslahah, much benefit in boycotting them. For one, it could be dangerous for them. Secondly, it could be dangerous for their religion, meaning that, the Muslims no longer want to be with me. Well, I will now congregate with this gang or this racial group, because that's how you need to roll in a lot of those facilities. You roll either by your locality, by your gang affiliation, if you're not affiliated with a gang, or your race. Race is very big in the American system of incarceration, in the American correctional system. So with that being the case, you are now pushing your brothers away. And you are also mostly turning away people who are weaker in their iman. So this can be a source of destroying them. Recently, another brother that I know who's incarcerated contacted me, and he said, how should we deal with, I know there's certain brothers, they want to come and hang around. Well, it's the same mas'ala, different individual. He said they want to come to the Jumu'ah, but we're not having that because this guy is gay. This guy is, he's shows one face with us, and it's well known what he's doing out there on the yard and with these guys and this guys and these individuals. So he asked me about the ruling about this individual and so forth, and I said, absolutely do not only do not boycott him and do not turn him away from Islam and say that he's no longer Muslim or make takfir of him, but no, you want to invite him and let him know that this is sinful in Islam, but no, stay Muslim, stay with the brothers, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and maybe Allah tabarak wa ta'ala will favor you to make tawbah and move away from that lifestyle or what have you. So mostly, and those are just some examples, that these, by boycotting, there will be, in a prison system, mostly it will be more harmful for the individual being boycotted, and even the Jama'ah will be weaker. Imam Ibn Abdul Barr, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasiya, one of the great classical scholars, he has a very famous book called Tamheed, which is an explanation of Imam Malik's book, which is called Al-Muwatta Imam Malik. So, and it has a lot of collection of the Salaf and Athar of the Salaf and so forth. So Imam Ibn Abdul Barr, he said regarding the issue of making Hajr in general, he said, وَلَا هِجْرَ إِلَّا لِمَنْ تَرْجُو تَأْدِيبِهِ بِهَا أَوْ تُخَالِفْ مِنْ شَرِّهِ فِي بِدْعَةٍ أَوْ غَيْرِهَا. So he said that there's really no making this Hajr, boycotting someone, leaving them and having them away from you, unless you hope as a source of to correct them, a punishment in order to teach them, to correct them, meaning that there's a good propensity that they're going to come back and they're going to leave the sin. So for example, if someone is doing drugs and he's in the Jama'ah in prison, and the brothers know this and they don't want him, they want to kind of punish him, it could be mashru' if there's a greater maslahah. But as I said, because I've dealt with a lot of incarcerated individuals, most of them, the brothers that I know, are very weak. If you were to do that, they don't know anything about Hajr. They don't know anything about these Masail. You would turn them away. And a lot of the ones that I deal with are reverts. They would leave Islam. They've already left their family. Some of them are still in their gangs. They're with various Mexican gangs. They're with Crips and Bloods. I had Crips and Bloods I dealt with. And when you deal with these individuals, a lot of the brothers are just barely practicing their Islam, if they are. Sometimes they pray, sometimes they don't pray. Sometimes they come to Jumu'ah, sometimes they don't come to Jumu'ah. Sometimes they break their fast in Ramadan, sometimes they fast most of Ramadan. So they are already, hanging on to their deen. They would have no clue, and I can speak personally, at least in the places that I have had to deal with brothers, no, they would not understand anything about it. Matter of fact, it would only possibly cause violence, or they just leave Islam, or they just, hate myself and hate the brothers. Okay, so you do not want to, you have to always look at the masalih and mafasid, and most of the time under those circumstances, because this isn't outside, and even in the outside communities, a lot of times making hajr of people, it has to be mashru'. You have to find that there's a sharia-based benefit. So hopefully that's the most understood thing from all my rambling, is that it needs to be sharia-based benefit, that you're actually going to correct the individual. You're not going to scare the individual from Islam. You're not going to scare them back into more sins. You're not going to turn them away, but rather it is hopefully corrective, not out of hatred, not of some other reason. So don't rush to just make hajr for everything. It's a part of the deen, meaning that it's mabni ala shay. It's built on something. It's built on the harms and the benefits. It's not just like, every time somebody does a bid'ah, or every time someone is a mubtadi'ah, or every time someone is a sinner, and we know it, we're going to make hajr of him. No, because maybe it's ghayr mashmu'. Maybe you will scare that person. This person's a new Muslim. He's got an earring of a cross. This one was in the club last night. Sister, now she's wearing the niqab, but she was dancing on a pole the other night. What are you going to do? You're going to make hajr of her. So understand these masail. It's very, very important, habitifillah, to know and understand these issues. So going back to the statement of Ibn Abdul Barr, so he said that there's no hijrah unless it's going to be, like as a punishment to kind of correct people, or you are fearful of their evil regarding their religious innovation, or other than that, meaning it could be sins, they could be a wicked sinner, a fasik bringing around harm to the community. And as I said, mostly when you're incarcerated, there is a great need to stick together. There's a great need to not turn individuals away because mostly they don't understand it. So I personally, this is just my tasawwur, what I can see from the outside of this particular thing, regardless if these are more knowledgeable communities because they're Salafi communities and maybe the imam and maybe they have people teaching them. I honestly would almost never employ that. Again, it's looking at the issues, looking at the masalih and the mafasid, and that would be a very last resort. So the brothers, bi'idnillah, should stop this because the Prophet ﷺ said, La darar wa la dirar. There's no harm in reciprocating harm. If you turn someone away from their Islam, from their deen, because you were the only thing that they left, that they felt good about being a Muslim, yes, they're out in the yard, they're smoking weed, yes, they're using fentanyl, yes, they're doing suboxone, yes, they are, akramakum Allah, even homosexual or bisexual or doing what they're doing in the prison, but you turned them away from the Jumu'ah. Now maybe they left Islam. Maybe you caused a greater harm. And the Prophet ﷺ called, La darar wa la dirar. No harm and no reciprocating harm. So that's just a little bit about this message. And I hope that you find benefit and that you can share this with our brothers. They can take it, they cannot take it. But again, we're trying to look at things based on the book and the sunnah. And the book and the sunnah shows us as those qawa'id and usul that we see from Ahl al-Ilm wa Fiqh wa Sunnah, like Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, wa ghayrihi, in the history of Islam, that we find that they look at these issues based on the masalih wa mafasid. They look at the harms and the benefits. Is it going to be a Sharia-based benefit, or is it going to be a harm to something related to the deen? They're going to look and weigh and look at the khafadarain, the lesser of the two evils, and they're going to look at what is more beneficial over that which is more harmful. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.